The TrekWorks YouTube channel is sponsored by HDA ModelWorks, suppliers of scale lighting products, detail accessory parts, and complete model kits. Visit HDAModelWorks.com today.
Welcome everybody, Boyd here with you again. This is part 8 of our Polar Lights 1/350 scale Enterprise build. We left off in the last video there where we were working on the hull here. We got the two halves put together, we got all of our seam work done, worked with some putty, got our edges all cleaned up, did a lot of sanding on it, worked you through the whole process there. We started off with our 180, took it down to 320. Then I basically went over this whole thing with 600 grit, cleaning up all the scratches in the plastic and just double checking all my seam work here. Again, it's kind of hard to tell how your final putty work is going to be until you put a little bit of primer on there. So that's going to be our next step here. But before we get to that little spot, we're going to do a couple little cleanup things here first. I'll talk to you about this front end here, guys. I talked to you about how this little ring in here needed to be light blocked. I put a paper towel in here so I wouldn't get overspray and all this. And I took my regular flat black spray can stuff, my light blocking paint, and just went around that ring. And we want to do that before we paint this because as I mentioned, that plastic, even though it doesn't leak light, that little ring right in there, since we've got all this bright light coming from the hull, it will glow and it'll give you a kind of a weird glow around your deflector dish in there, and you don't want to have that. So we have to block that off before we paint it. And then let's see what else have we got here. We've got masks that I did on the entire thing. Took me about an hour to put all the masks down, but I used the set from HDA ModelWorks, and I've got it on all the windows on the neck, the hull, the pylons here, even our small ones here at the back of the fan tail that I talked about. I replaced the mask up there at the top of the shuttle bay where that little control room is, and I've got one right here that's right over the top of our clear part here where the dome is going to go on the top, and we want some light to come through that. So everything has been masked. I'm going to take these little ion pod lights right here. I'm going to take just a tiny dab of canopy glue and put that in there and use that as a mask, and then after we paint it I'll pull those out because I'm going to use a little bit of solar res to make my small little domes right there. So we're all set here, guys. Now the last thing that I talked about as we talked about towards the end of the last video there is we had sanded this down to where now we can see these three little spots where our lighting's supposed to go on the spine. They're showing up as little circles, you know, little shadows there in the putty. So I've got a tiny little pin vise here, and before I move on, before I prime this and I won't be able to see them anymore, I want to drill just three little pilot holes there so that after it's all painted and everything I can see them. Now I'm going to have to drill them out a little bit bigger, but this way I won't be totally blind, and I'll keep the holes so small that you know, any little bit of paint that gets in there from our process here is not going to, you know, damage the lighting or do anything to the inside. So let me make sure I get lined up right in the center of these. And you just want to go real careful and real slow, and don't even push. Just let the, you know, turn the drill and let it eat into it, because it's that soft putty, guys. And I really don't want to push, you know, the whole thing down out of there right now. I just want to drill a tiny little hole right in the center of each one, evenly spaced apart. So I'm just letting my, you know, I'm just turning it is all I'm doing. I'm kind of letting the weight of the drill bit or the weight of the pin vise just, you know, work its way through the putty there. Got number 2. And we're going for number 3 here, so. Okay, all the way through. So we've got our 3 little spots right there, and like I said, those holes are so small you won't, you know, minuscule amount of paint, if any at all, is going to get in there. So those will be permanently marked for us. Now the last thing we talked about too was back here at the shuttle bay opening. We've got this little archway above the doors themselves, and this one actually fit pretty good. The leaks were pretty minimal in there where the light's leaking past, because like I talked about, it doesn't quite match up to the contour of the hull here. So as I talked about, we're going to make up a little slurry of some of my perfect plastic putty here. This is just water-soluble putty. So I put a little bit in this cup, and I've got my pump spray bottle here. I'm just going to give a couple of dashes into that and just kind of stir it here until I get it thin enough where my little plastic syringe here will suck it up. And then we're going to reach in there and just gently put a bead of this putty right over that little seam that's in there at the top, you know, where the light's leaking out. And this will be thick enough where it'll stay in there. If it looks a little rough or a little bumpy, I'll wait just a few minutes until it starts to harden up just a little bit, and then I'll come in there with a brush with some water on it, and it'll smooth right out. But the trick to it is wait till it's cured for a little while, because if you just go in there when it's totally wet, you'll just brush the stuff right out of there, and there won't be anything. You water it down too much, and it'll fall into the crack, and you'll have to do it all over again. It takes a little bit of practice. To get used to doing that, but you might hit it your first time. It's not really as hard as I'm making it sound. Okay, so let's see if we can draw this up into the syringe now. I thinned it out pretty good. Yep, we got a nice. Might have went just a tiny little bit too thin, but we'll try it. The kind of hard to show you the viscosity of something on film, but I've got it to where it's maybe think about like maybe milk twice as solid as milk. And we're going to try this, and we don't need to put a lot. I'm going to try to hold this up on end and stand above it and do this for you guys. I want to be I don't want to push a flood of it in there with my tool here. I just want it to go in there a nice even bead. And if I do it right, like that, let me see, I want to get a little bit around the bottom too, because we got a little gap right there. Okay. And all I got was a spot where I barely touched the doors, so I'm just wiping that off with my brush. I'm going to take a tiny little bit. I'm actually going to dip this in my cup here and do it with the brush. There's this tiny little seam right here, right in front of the shuttle bay doors, or right in front of that control room where the hull comes together, and then of course where it meets the ceiling. We want to make sure we don't have a little light leak there, so I'm just brushing a little bead around that. Okay, I've got a paper towel here, so we'll clean our brush, and then I'll just take and you can see I'm just going to take and smooth out the excess stuff. And that'll dry so thin, guys, that when the primer goes over it, you won't even see it. You won't have to sand it or anything. It'll look pretty smooth in there. Okay? So I'm going to use the brush to kind of spread it out. I can see where it kind of moved on me already. What I've got to do is I've got to let this sit off camera for a minute, standing straight up like this, maybe for a good 10 minutes or so. And this will already start to harden up. I'm just getting a little bit of the excess out of there. Yeah, I made that just a tiny little bit too thin, you guys, but no problem. It's not hurting anything. And this just dries with air. Don't try to force dry this or anything. Just let it dry on its own. Okay, just kind of looking to make sure we don't slop any of it around. And I'm going to put just a tiny little bit more on that seam again. I can see it still trying to creep through just a little. Looking good though, guys. Okay. Yep, just got a little bit on the door, so I'm going to grab my clean brush here and put a little bit of water on it. And I'll wipe it off with that. I want to try and do a nice clean job. Okay, guys, gone is gone. It's got a nice seal all the way around it. We shouldn't have any light leaks, and that putty takes paint and primer really good. So when we hit that, now I'll probably just dust over this, you know, with my primer and everything, And then when I go to actually paint the hull color in there, I'll use my airbrush for that. We'll be using my minigun to spray the rest of this, because we can cover a lot of ground, but I don't want to try to blast a lot of air pressure in here and flood a lot of paint in there, so I use the airbrush for that. And we also don't want to put a lot of paint here over these masks either and have it leak on us. We got to be really careful, but this is all bare plastic here still, so we've got to light, put a few coats of paint so it's light blocked and just leave these little fantail lights once we pull the masks. So, okay, I'm going to pause. I'm going to stand this up over on the other workbench and let it dry just like it is. And I'll come back once that's done, and we'll have it on our base. I have that pretty much ready to go. We're going to paint it on that. And we'll be over on the other area, the paint area, and we're going to start laying down our primer and everything. So that'll be the next step here, guys. Be right back. All right, you guys. Well, the next step we're going to do here before we head on over to do our primer, we've had this putty on the back by the shuttle bay drying there for a little bit. I just real quick off camera here, I plugged in to my power, and I kind of, made note of where I'm going to be dealing with a little bit of light leaks. So we had some right here back by the bottom side of the shuttle bay on the fantail here, and of course we're going to hit all the way around the front where our masks are on this area here, and I'm going to dust around a little bit of the shuttle bay itself, and I had a couple here on the belly. So what I've done is I've decanted my my black spray paint that's in the can, the cheap stuff, and put it in my airbrush here so I can just control it a little bit more. And I'm just going to hit it, go ahead and cover up these areas right in here. And we're going to do a little bit over around our shuttle bay. Nice primer will go over the top of that, you guys. So you can see I've just dusted down in there all the way around. And make sure I get enough on there. This stuff dries super fast, especially if it comes out of an airbrush. So we'll just help it along here just a tiny little bit. Okay, then we're going to come up in this area right in here. And that's all I need, you guys. That's going to give me a little extra on there so that when we hit it with the primer now, that'll help hide our light leaks there without piling on the paint super thick. Okay, so I'll reposition the camera here. We're going to move over to the painting area, and we're going to start priming this. So we'll be right back with that. So we've moved over to the painting area now, and I'm ready to hit this with my primer. Just a couple more things to point out before we get going. I took my shop air, my compressed air, and I just really lightly blew off the entire model to make sure all of our dust was off of it and everything. And then you can see, as I talked about earlier, really important step here, I masked off the entire socket part of the neck on that and the pylons as well. Because like I mentioned earlier, we don't want any paint on that at all, you guys. Any kind of layer of paint, even a coat of primer, and it'll be really hard to push that up into the saucer. It's going to be a tight enough fit already as it is. And same thing here. We did that little bit of, beveling on the edges here with the sandpaper, so that should be okay. I've glued on the small little detail parts there now on both sides, so all the way around she's ready to go. I've got some paper towel in there, so let's go ahead and hit it. I'm using this 2-in-1 primer from Duplicolor, and I want to make sure I'm using the same primer that I used on the other parts that I've already painted, like the saucer, and we'll be, using it on the nacelles, because it's a little bit darker than my other primer, and that will affect the overall shade of color, and my color won't exactly match, so I want to make sure I keep this the same. Okay, so here we go. We're just going to put a nice light coat on to begin with. The hardest part to get to on this is right up here in this little neck recessed area. And I'm just putting a little dust coat on to begin with. I'm not trying to pile it on here super thick. sure I get the leading and tailing edges of my pylons real good there. Up the front part of the neck and the back part of the neck. Alright, I'll swing it around and get some more of this. You can see spraying the primer on this light, it starts to dry really fast. So like that first coat I put down, it's already dry. Now I'm working on the bottom. Go ahead and get this leading edge of this pylon on this side. Just hitting it where I see a little bit of my red putty still coming through. Make sure we get underneath of that fantail real good. And across the shuttle bay. That's important. Ooh, don't tip over on me. Still a little bit awkward. It's not totally balanced until it's until you get the front saucer on and the pylon or the engine nacelles too. So we have to be careful. All right, so that'll be just fine for now, you guys. We're not going to go crazy. You know me, I'm always kind of a, you know, one step at a time kind of thing. So we'll let that settle in really nice. We'll have a good look over it when we come back here in a minute. And we'll see if the seams look good and everything. And then if we have to do any additional putty work, and if not, we'll just go ahead and bump a little bit more primer on it. Be right back. Okay, you guys, well, I've been allowing the primer to dry for a little while. I actually went back in and shot one more little light dust coat on top. And that was the only thing you guys missed, but I've been letting it dry here for a good hour, and I've just been giving it the old once over here, looking for any trouble spots on the seam work that we did with our putty, and everything's looking great, guys. Up there around the neck, it came out really nice. Along the top, all the edges of our pylons and our neck and everything are looking really sharp. There's no seam work or seam showing on the bottom anymore. Everything looks great here back by the shuttle bay. So I'm happy with it, guys. We're going to... what I'll do is I'll scuff it down one more time with some 600, and then being careful not to knock off any of my masks. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go forward with our paint work. I've got my paint mixed up over here, my minigun ready to go. We'll be using that. So we'll get it all sprayed down with our paint, probably take 2 or 3 coats. I'll be using my heat gun to help dry it a little bit, as I mentioned, the same way as I did on the saucer. You know, I'm using this water-based paint, so we have to help that a little bit. And then once we get the paint on there, we'll go ahead and pull all the masks, and then we'll shoot our clear on there and seal it all up. That way we're ready for the next step, which will be putting down all the decal markings on this. So I'll get the camera repositioned here on the tripod, and we'll get ready to spray our hull color. Be right back. All right, everybody. Well, let's get going and lay down some paint on our Enterprise here. I've got my minigun ready. I'm going to be spraying it about 25 psi. So I've got my paint all stirred up and ready to go here too. So one last important thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run it through a strainer before I put it in the cup here, and that way we don't have any little particles in our paint. I mixed this paint a couple weeks ago and it's been sitting, and it can settle a little bit. So we're gonna put about maybe a little bit more than a quarter of a cup in there. We don't want a full cup because we're going to be you know, twisting and turning a lot and tipping the gun almost upside down to get at all these weird angles on this thing, so we don't want to spill a bunch of it out. I want to make sure the lid's down on there real tight. And we're all set. Check my spray pattern here. Everything looks great. Okay, we'll get this out of the way over here. And bring up the Enterprise. Hopefully you guys are seeing this. I'll check the viewfinder there. Looks good. Okay. Gotta turn on my ventilation, you guys. It's gonna get a little bit noisy. Okay. And one last thing I want to check here is I'm going to take and lightly blow off the surface one more time, make sure we don't have any dust or anything stuck on there. Don't want to blow too hard and blow any masks off though, just take it easy if you do this. Okay. Get our heat gun ready to go. Alright you guys, let's have at it here. Let's start off on the kind of on the side here a little bit. Very light coats, guys, very light. Again, this is water-based paint and we do not want it to run. So just sit back and enjoy. It's going to take a little bit here. A lot of complex shapes to cover up. I'm just hitting it with the heat gun, just kind of watching it flash. I can see the, you know, once I see the gloss disappear off of it, I back off. Alright, try to get the bottom a little bit here now. Always the hardest part to do. In front of our pylons. A little closer to the edge so I can get down below. Coming along nice. Everything's looking good so far, you guys. Haven't seen any runs or any big pieces of dust or anything sticking in it, so it's looking good. Let's go for the other side here. Slowly coming around, you guys. Not talking too much here because I'm just kind of trying to focus on what I'm doing and keeping my eyeball on it, make sure I don't miss anywhere. Now keep in mind, like I've said before, this is definitely going to darken up a little bit too. It looks kind of light right now, but once we hit it with our clear, it will definitely darken by about 1 or 2 shades. It will perfectly match our saucer that we painted. I'm painting this all out of the same batch of paint. You can see there's a lot of angles and a lot of edges to make sure you get covered up. Okay, I make sure I get inside this deflector housing real good here. Okay, I think we're going to call that a wrap, you guys. I'm going to finish drying this out, and then we'll pause here and take a good look at it in some good light, and go from there. But I think we're good, guys. I think it's going to come out real nice. I think we'll be ready for our... we've got to actually come in and spray this little blue stripe on the front part of the neck, so I'll show you how we do that next, I guess. Okay guys, be right back. Okay everybody, well we've made it all the way back over to the other bench now, and our paint job turned out beautiful here guys. I'm really pleased with it. That water-based paint, like I said, you just have to totally take your time. You can't get in a hurry. You've just got to put it on in light coats, otherwise it's going to run and everything. And then the lighter you spray it on, if you use a little heat to assist it to dry like I was doing there, it'll dry almost instantly, and then you can just keep going and going. It took me about a good 30 minutes or so to do the entire thing. But all of our seams came out really nice. This baby is smooth and beautiful. I'll just kind of show it here to you. Everything looks really good on the bottom. We're all set. So the next step that we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to paint on the blue line that's on the leading edge of the neck. So I'm going to use this little spot right up here at the very front of it, where it kind of wraps underneath of the you know, it's a recessed area there. It's hard to get at. It's hard to get your masking tape up in there. So I'm going to use some of this. I hope I have just enough left here, guys. It's getting down to the wire here, but let me see. Just in that little corner up there in the front, this is some Tamiya flexible vinyl tape. I can't remember what width this is, but you can kind of judge. It's not super thick, but the reason I'm going to use this right here is it will make a little bit of a curve, you guys, without wrinkling, and we've got a little bit of a curve right there. I'm going to grab my tweezers to help me lay it down in there. I've got to get right up on top of it here, get a good line of sight. I want to grip the front part here with my tweezers so I can kind of hold some tension on it, and then I'm going to kind of pull it back past where I want to go, and then try to put the rest of it down with my other hand. Alright, and we're going to kind of pull it tight and get around the corner here. About back to right there. Hopefully my head's not in the way for you guys. I'm just taking my tweezer and I'm just running it along that edge just to seal it in real nice. Alright, and we'll flip it over and do the same thing on the other side here. Just checking the edge on that tape there. I thought I saw something stuck to it, but we're good. Looks like we're going to be okay on this. I've got to order some more of this stuff. Alright, and we'll hook it with our tweezers again here. And I'm going to wrap this around the corner to get that little gap nice and tight so I don't have any paint bleed in there. Okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to back this up with some of our regular masking tape. But we just, you know, I can get up in there with my tape, but I'm showing you guys an easier way to do it. I'm used to using I'll just take and tear off tiny little pieces on that masking tape and just keep working my way up in there. But I've been a painter for years, and I know how to mask really quick. This is a better way for you guys to see this. Hopefully I'm not blocking it. Just holding it down as I go around. I got a little bit of a wrinkle there that I don't like. The reason why is I've got too sharp of a... I'm trying to make too much of a turn. Get this at a little bit better angle here this time. Okay, I think that might work better. Just putting a little bit of pressure on it. Get it to make that turn for me. There we go. Then you can just kind of trail off here, because we're going to be getting this line with our regular masking tape. So I'm going to start off here with this thinner stuff, and I'm just going to Now I'm going to catch this, line here on the edge of the neck. Just keep going around. I don't have to be perfect here because we're only going to be painting the leading edge, but I just, don't want any overspray to get on that. Now I'm going to overlap my vinyl tape there where I can just, kind of still see it just a little bit. That way I make sure I'm not up in there too far. All right. We'll put one across the front. Always reach in there with your tweezers, guys, and push down, get in there, and or whatever you want to use. You can even use like a flat popsicle stick or something like that, but just make sure you get up in there real close and push down your loose edges of your tape, guys, or you're going to get a little leak in there. And if it happens way up in there, it's going to be hard to get up in there and fix that. Okay? And I don't like to go back and, on the stuff I do, I don't like to go back and do like touch-ups with, with a brush or anything like that, because, when you get up close and look at it, you can definitely see where that's been done. I'm just kind of fussy that way. I'll respray a whole area if I have to before I'll, use a brush to do that. Okay, so we're coming around the corner here, you guys. All right. Now you notice I'm masking. I don't care if I get right over the masks or anything, because after we paint this stripe, the masks are all going to be coming off. So if the paint, or if this masking tape pulls any of it off there, I don't really care. All right, now we're going to take the thin one again, and we're going to make the line coming down. So the way you think about this is there's no real definition right there. The way I do it is you can kind of just see where the curve starts to come over and it starts to get to the flat part. That's where the line's supposed to end. Now, you're just supposed to just catch the little, these two window groups right here, okay? If you notice on the 11-footer, it just catches the lower left-hand corner of each one of these windows. All right? So I'm going to come across and make sure. Actually, it's just this one right here. I take that back. It's just this one. This one here, you don't see, but the lower group right here, I guess it'd be the one right in the middle. It just barely catches that. And you'll see when you get it lined up pretty straight. You just want that little corner showing. And I'm just looking at that contour again, and I'm just coming straight down. Okay, and I'm just going to take my tweezers, and again, right up here, I'm going to tuck that in before I let the rest of the tape stick right there, because I want to seal right there. I don't want that paint to leak right in that spot. Now I'm rubbing down the rest of it tight. Okay, up here, we're just going over the top of this masking tape, so no big deal. All right. Now we'll take a little bit of our thicker stuff. It's way too long. And we'll just kind of, cover up this little rest of the neck right here. I'm going to be using an airbrush with really low pressure, so I'm not going to get a lot of overspray. I don't need to mask off the whole, the whole model here just for this. Okay, make sure that that's tucked in. Just kind of fold that back like that. I'll take one of our wide ones and go across here. Okay, let's turn her around now. Just looking at my front view here, making sure I've got a nice seal around that neck. Looking good. Okay, now we'll catch the same line again. Just catching the corner of that little window right there. And you see what I'm doing with my tape? I'm not letting this part stick down on it yet, because if you do and you try to push this down, it may stick for a little while, but the pressure is going to lift that little corner back up. I guarantee you guys, it's that rat that tries to get you every time. It'll try to pull back up, and then it'll happen right in the middle of when you're painting. So I'm tucking that down on there so it's got its own kind of natural pressure on it. Then I'm going to work this curve back. You do that on any area, guys, where you're masking, and you're going around a contour or something like that. That same concept right there works on you know, all kinds of painting techniques or painting, you know, conditions. That's just a little bit of experience I'm sharing with you. Okay, so we're going to cover that one up with a thicker one again. And then we'll come down here on the side. Just making sure all my little edges are tucked down. Paint likes to find a weakness. Okay, got one little spot showing through right there. We'll cover that up. All right, you guys, we're pretty well masked up here, looking good. I will show you my trick for making that color. It's often referred to as Federation blue or duck egg blue. So what I do to make that is basically it's just a light blue with a little bit of black mixed with it to give it a more of a, you know, a grayish blue look. So we've already got our hull color here, you guys. This is I took a little bit out of my main mix. And I've got some craft acrylic over here. Let me see if I can grab the right one. Yeah, this one is apple barrel light blue. You can see it's already kind of pretty close to that color that we're talking about. It's sort of a light robin egg or duck egg blue. And I'm just going to put a couple of drops of this in to my base color here of my hull, because, you know, when they paint these guys, they usually when they're doing accent colors and stuff, unless they want a really contrasting accent color, like say the red that's on the pennants or something, if you think about it, when they do accent colors, they usually work off of the same base color and take a variation of the base color to make the accent color. Okay, so it makes sense that you would start off with this this, you know, basic hull color here, and then just kind of change it a little bit. So I'm just putting a few drops at a time of this blue in here and holding it up in the light nice and bright where I can, you know, I'm comparing it right to the hull color and I'm seeing it change, because this is supposed to look subtle, you guys. It's not supposed to look you know, like a huge bold blue stripe on the front of this thing. It's just supposed to kind of blend in. In fact, what they call it is sort of a transparent blue when you look up the, you know, after the they did this research on this thing when they restored it. I'm just going to go one drop more here. And you know, they listed all the original colors and everything, and that's exactly what they called it. They call it a transparent blue. So kind of interesting. But there you go, guys. I'm not sure if you guys can tell, but it's not quite this bright, you know, blue that we're talking about. It's more of a subtle blending in, kind of a, you know, more of a gray looking blue. All right, and that's going to look really nice on there. You guys have seen these before. Let me clean off my brush really quick, and we'll add a little bit of water to our mix here, and then we'll put it right in the airbrush and have at it. Let me get my heat gun over here too. Get my airbrush ready to go. All set with that. Okay, let's just kind of thin this up just a little bit here. It's not bad already. We'll get that a little bit thinner. Yeah, people ask me all the time about how thin do I make this. I can't really tell you, you guys. I make it to where it's about milk viscosity, or maybe just a little thicker, but it really depends on the kind of a gun you're going to spray through. What I basically tell you is spray it as thick as you can tolerate it, right? That your gun will still, whether it's an airbrush or whether it's the minigun that we were using, mix it up as thick as your air gun can handle, because that way it'll cover better and all that, and you won't have to use as many coats. You know, with my small little airbrush, it's got a small needle in it, and so it won't move, you know, really thick paint. I can get away with thicker paint on my bigger gun, though, you know, so it kind of I'll mix that. If I'm going to be spraying through that, I'll mix it a little thicker. In other words, I won't add as much water. But for the airbrush like we've got here, you got to have it pretty thin. So it's just a little bit maybe thicker than milk is what it is right now. Pouring it straight in there. Okay, and then we're going to just off to the side here, a little test spray. Good to go there. All right, so we're going to just come down here, put a little coat. Oop, got a little splatter there, no big deal. That's why I always start off on the tape. Okay, and you guys probably aren't even going to be able to see this going on because it's just going to look shiny to you. Because the color is, you know, pretty close. We'll notice the big difference when we pull the tape. I just have to do a good job and make sure I get it on all nice and even and everything because it's so hard to see. So I'm just going to take my time and do it slow here. All right. That front edge real good. Spraying at about 20 psi so we don't get a lot of overspray and all that bad stuff. Once this is done, you guys, we're going to pull all the masks and we'll seal it with our clear coat. All right. Hit it one more time here, and then we'll flip it to the other side. I can see the blue on there. You guys probably can't even see it, though. That's almost like doing the iridescent paints. Those can be difficult to work with because when you spray them down, especially the blue, it's hard to even see them until you pull your mask off. So it takes a little practice to get where you can do it the same every time. You know the amount of paint to put on there without really being able to see it. Just comes from repetition. I'd like to get a little bit more slack in there. There we go. Notice I'm not getting too close with this heat gun. I'm just a good 6 or 7 inches away. I've mentioned this before, but as soon as this thing dies, I'm going to replace this with a regular hair dryer. I think that'll actually work better for, you know, I used these on the cars when I was doing them, and the plastic's pretty thick and whatever I was heating up. But for models, it's a little bit more, you got to be a little bit more careful, and I think a hair dryer will actually move more air. It's got a more powerful fan in it too. It might work out better. Some of you guys out there are probably already using those. See, even putting that one light coat, this paint's so thin that I came real close to getting a run right there. Just you have to be really careful with this stuff. Just put it on light. It's a little frustrating. It doesn't cover like you know, regular paint that you're used to working with. You just have to put it on in layers, but you get a really nice finish in the end. I really like this stuff. Once it's got a nice clear sealer on it, it's plenty tough too. Just as tough as any other kind of paint that's out there. It has a bad rap for being soft, you know, and it is kind of if you leave it all by itself. So if you don't want, if you're painting something with this kind of paint, this craft paint, and you're not going to, you know, you're not going to be putting a seal coat on it, you only want to do that in a spot where you're, you know, you're never going to touch it or anything's going to bump against it or anything. Okay, so go ahead and really make sure I get my leading edge there. Yeah, it pretty much almost looks like there isn't any change there, guys, but I can see it, and we'll see it right here when we pull the mask in just a second. Get her dry one more time. Have a look at the other side. Yep, they look all nice and even to me. All right, I'll just roll a little bit of this tape back, and hopefully now you guys can see the difference. Real nice. See how that kind of just fades in there? And then you'll have a little paint line on there, and you just take your finger or a paper towel or something and just rub over it, and that'll all just come right off of there. Plus it'll be hidden even better when we put our clear coat over this. All right, so I won't bore you guys with this part. I'm going to just be pulling all my tape off. When I come back here for the final segment, I'll have all the masks pulled off. I'm just going to use my tweezers to do that. If I get one that's stubborn, I'll just reach in there with a the corner of my number 11 hobby knife here and pick it out of there. But that's the method I use for getting all the masks off. Nothing fancy there. So when I come back, all the masks off, all the tape off, and we're going to clear coat this thing. Be right back. Back with you again, everybody. Took me about a half hour or so, and I got all the masks pulled off, all the masking tape, everything cleaned up really nice. Our paint job turned out really good. I didn't have to do any touching up or anything. It looks like we got everything covered really nice. You can see all the seams are looking really good. Everything's blended in really nice. One of the side benefits I want to point out to you guys again about this craft acrylic paint is that it dries nice and hard and stable, so that when you pull these little masks off, you get a nice clean breakaway there. If you can see that, I didn't have to do hardly any cleanup on that after I pulled all the masks. They came straight off with no problem. You know, regular paint, it can stay a little soft around the edges or whatever and make a little bit of a jagged line there. Where I'm used to going back in there with a little pick or something and kind of cleaning all the edges up, but it worked out really good. There's our nice blue stripe you can see showing up really nice there, and she's ready to go. Now I went back here at the fan tail, and I did what I talked about. I took my Tamiya transparent colors. I did red, green, and yellow in the center, and I just used my tiniest brush and I brushed all that on. I went over the lines a little bit, so I just came back with the whole color here on a small brush and touched up around the edges, and then let that dry. And then I took my 600 grit sandpaper, just lightly sanded it to kind of smooth it out a little bit. And then when I spray my clear on it now, it's going to all blend in and look really, really good. So we want to spray over all the windows. That's why I pulled the mask. It's perfectly fine to get the clear on those. In fact, it'll make them look a little nicer if there's any scratches on them or anything like that. And so we're ready to go, you guys. I'll move from here over to the back to the painting area, and we're going to finish clear coating this, and we'll call this part of the video series a wrap. We'll come back in part 9, and we'll be putting on all the decals, the markings and everything, and then we'll reseal it, and the secondary hull will be pretty much done. After that, it'll be time to drop the saucer on and put the nacelles on. So coming along pretty nice now, guys. I'll see you in just a second back over in the painting area. All right, everybody. Well, we're moving along now. I've got it over in the spray booth area. I just took my compressed air and just dusted it off real quick, and we're ready to shoot our clear coat. I'm going to be using this Duplicolor matte wheel clear coat again, the same stuff that we used on the saucer that we showed you a couple episodes ago. This works really good. It gives a nice, not too shiny, not too dull. It doesn't dry with a rough texture. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay down a really nice even coat. I'm not worried about making it look perfect on the first attempt, and just going to get a nice coat and make sure I get the entire thing covered. So here we go. And you might see this, it'll darken up a little bit like I talked about. That's kind of the thing that happens when you add a clear. Okay, we'll come around, grab it up here on the top, get along the back here real good, up inside the inner pylons, back of the neck, across the shuttle bay. Go for the bottom now. Inside the deflector housing a little bit. Across the front there. Front side of the neck. don't want to pile it on too thick on the bottom, especially because that's what's going to try to run on you. And that'll be it, you guys. Pretty easy, right? So it's looking beautiful, and this will have to dry for a good half hour to an hour. I'll come back and look at it and see how it looks, and maybe I'll dust one more light coat onto it. But that'll be about it. Now we'll let that dry really good. We've got our seal on there now, so we can use our water slide decals and not worry about staining this water-based paint like I talked about before. So we're all set, you guys. When we come back in part 9, we'll be doing the decaling on this, and we'll see where we get. If we get really far, we may even mount the saucer in the next video. We'll see how we come along. So thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe if you like the videos, you guys, and hit that like button. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next time, everybody. Take care, and happy modeling, everyone.